This video was sponsored by CuriosityStream. When you sign up at the link in the description, you'll now also get free access to Nebula, a free video streaming platform I and a bunch of your favorite educational YouTubers have built for ourselves. Hey, I have a challenge for you. Can you think of the last time that the Galaxy S or the Note series, so any of Samsung's major flagship lines, have actually introduced something majorly new to the smartphone market in the last couple of years? I can't. I actually put together a top 10 list of the most important new tech trends of the last 2 to 3 years, and they're just nowhere to be found. So these are my top 10. High refresh rate screens, in-display fingerprint readers, periscope cameras, these super high resolution camera sensors that use pixel binning, quad cameras on the rear, notches, hole punch cameras, pop-up cameras, really fast charging, and finally waterfall screens. That's the top 10, and suspiciously the Galaxy S and Note series were first to introduce exactly 0 of these 10 features, which I found really surprising and unusual at first. It's surprising in part because Samsung used to be the company that was famous for throwing essentially any new innovation at their new flagship, whether it was ready or not, and also because Samsung makes most of the components that enable all of those innovations in the first place. They make the high refresh rate OLED screens that curve and let manufacturers place cameras and fingerprint readers under them, and they make the camera sensors powering a big chunk of the camera innovations, just to name a few. And that means Samsung specifically had to choose not to be the first to market with many of those things, keeping them out of their own flagships and giving them to competitors instead. And that's just weird, isn't it? Now, in the past, I've already made a video explaining why Samsung sometimes prioritizes their components business over their smartphone business. You can watch that video somewhere here. And I think that's certainly part of the explanation here, but I also think that there's more to the story here. I actually think Samsung is making these phones kind of boring by design, on purpose. So in the 66th episode of the Story Behind series, let me explain why. Samsung has clearly not just decided to stop innovating one day, and it's not that they've just stopped trying ridiculous new ideas either. They are still Samsung after all. Instead, what I think happened over the last few years is that they figured out that all of that wild experimentation, well, maybe their mainstream flagship smartphones are just not the right place for them. Looking at our top 10 list here actually gives us a pretty good idea of what's going on. 5 of these features Samsung left to competitors to come to the market with first, like letting OnePlus make the first mainstream 90Hz screen in a major smartphone, for example. And the other 5 Samsung chose to introduce into their A or M series first. The A70s got Samsung's first really high-resolution camera sensor, the A9 got their first quad camera setup, the M10 and M20 were the first to get notches, the A8 got the first hole punch screen, and the A80 got Samsung's first ever motorized camera design. 3 of those 5 apparently passed the test and eventually got graduated into their mainstream flagship smartphones after some refinements, while 2, the motorized cameras and the notches, apparently just got rejected. In other words, what Samsung appears to be doing here is letting new features get tested by their competitors. And they still profit off of making the components for them, but they don't have to take all of the risk themselves. Or if they want to take some of the risk, they first put it into an A or maybe an M series device before really committing and bringing it to, let's say, a mainstream S series or Note series device. I think that's smart, and it really reminds me of Apple's approach with the iPhone, actually. That company is famous for waiting and perfecting technologies before they introduce them to their phones, even if sometimes that means that they look like they are a year or 2 behind the competition. And Samsung seems to be doing the same lately. In the past, they threw eye tracking, hand gestures, huge screens, digital pens, heart rate monitors, curved screens, almost anything at their phones, whether they were polished or not. And sure, some of that stuff stuck around and changed the smartphone industry forever, but much of it faded into obscurity. Those kind of really risky bets might have been worth taking for the Samsung of old that was more desperate to stand out from a very busy Android field that it wasn't the clear king of yet, but I don't think they're worth taking for this new, more mature, more established Samsung anymore. The first in-screen fingerprint readers were just straight up bad, so they let the likes of Vivo and Nokia take a chance on them. The first notches were ugly and huge, so they let companies like Asus adopt them. The first hole punch displays had weird color tinting issues around them, so they let Honor experiment with it first. High refresh rate displays were kind of risky at first. Motorized cameras proved to be a complete fad, with almost all manufacturers abandoning them. And waterfall displays, I would argue, are just a straight up crime against humanity. I made a whole video about them explaining My Feelings you can watch right here, but the list just goes on. New stuff is just risky. Those kinds of risks might be worth it for smaller, hungrier companies, but they're just not worth it for the Samsung of today, especially not for their flagship smartphones that need to serve tens of millions of people reliably around the world. And that, in my opinion, is how we ended up with Samsung flagships like these. Beautiful, delightfully polished pieces of engineering that are also just getting a little boring. Now, if boring is not exactly what you're after, then you should try out Nebula. I'm sorry, I tried to come up with a less cringeworthy transition, but I just couldn't. Anyway, Nebula is the video streaming platform built and run by educational YouTubers, including me, and it features great originals like Money, a new game show from Tom Scott that he has custom designed to break friendships between your favorite educational YouTubers over money. There's also Real Engineering's fantastic series on the logistics of D-Day, hour-long extended documentaries from Wendover Productions, and a lot more. I upload all of my TechAltar content there early access and without ads, of course, and if you want to give it a try, you can now get access to Nebula for free with a subscription to CuriosityStream. CuriosityStream is of course the premier place on the internet for high-quality professional documentaries from the founder of the Discovery Channel, and they have a huge library of science, nature, and history content to binge while you are stuck at home. I'm currently binging a series called Animal Builders, cause watching chubby beavers gliding through water and building dams relaxes me extremely, but there's a ton of great content from hosts like David Attenborough, Jane Goodall, Stephen Hawking, and more. And if you use my link in the description to sign up for a subscription, you'll actually get access to both services for $20 for a full year. They'll just email you instructions on how to get Nebula. So try it out, and I hope to see you on Nebula soon.